welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would do something a little bit different, a little bit inspired by somebody else, and just because the Tony Awards are coming up, I wanted to make predictions about them, but in a slightly different way. I was inspired by Ryan Casselman, who does these kind of prediction videos with the Oscars for the acting categories and for the Best Picture categories. And one thing he does is he takes water and gives people different points based on awards that they've won. And I thought, could I translate that into the Tonys? And I definitely think that I can. So I'm making my predictions solely based on what trends I've kind of seen in the industry and how I think these Tony Awards are going to go this season. So with the Tonys, it is a little bit harder. I was trying to figure out ways, looking at Ryan's old videos and seeing how he was able to establish points and how they were supposed to go. And a lot of it was based on who won something, who had hype around it. But the main thing that I saw that was different about that was all of those were televised awards. Award shows leading up to the Tonys, a lot of them are not televised, so it's hard for the general public to know exactly what is going on and what is happening. Tony Awards is also voted on by a very, very, very small portion of people in the industry, unlike the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, where there is 10,000 members. I think only 700 or 800 people vote on the actual Tony Awards. So even though these awards are not televised, there's a lot less people that are going to take the time to sit home and watch it, and probably are going to have just more talks about what is being nominated and who could potentially win. How I've decided to distribute points is a few ways. The first way and the main way is going to be looking at the three major awards bodies that kind of vote on Tony-esque things before the actual Tony Awards. I will also be looking at the Olivier Awards, which are the equivalent of the British Tonys, think the BAFTAs to the Oscars, essentially. And looking at Pulitzer Prize winning plays and musicals and seeing if that factors into anything as well. And because a lot of these awards bodies, I'm going to be looking at 3 of them today, do also mix categories, they have leading performance instead of leading male and leading female. They also will combine a lot of Broadway and off-Broadway and sometimes off-Broadway productions. So for Best Musical, sometimes these categories are broken up by Broadway and off-Broadway. Sometimes they're not, and the categories are just solely based on Broadway and off-Broadway, whatever premiered in New York that season, no matter the stage. And in a way, I really do like that, because I think there's a stigma against off-Broadway, meaning it's worse, when really off-Broadway versus Broadway is just how big the theater is. It has more than 500 seats, it's considered Broadway. It has $4.99 and below, it's considered off-Broadway. There really isn't that much of a difference between prestige, which is just how big the theater is. As I distribute points, there will be 3 main awards bodies. That will be the Outer Critics Circle, the Drama Desk, and the Drama League Awards. And I will give points for someone who is nominated in that category and for someone who wins in that category, as I think getting the nomination is going to be hype enough or recognition enough where people are able to get that in their heads before they vote for the Tonys. And as I said, I will also be looking at the Olivier Awards and also the Pulitzer Prize winning, because I think that is why Purpose won last year over Oh Mary. While both were nominated for the Pulitzer, Purpose won the Pulitzer. And I really think that helped propel it, because that's what I was predicting to win for Best Play. Everyone was predicting Oh Mary, but I think that Pulitzer really helped push it over the edge. And so, very similar to Ryan, again, thank you Ryan for this inspiration, I have set up different graduated cylinders that I borrowed from school, and I am going to be adding points or water to whoever wins those categories. And yes, I know this one is technically smaller, but that is because I did not have the best supply at my school when I was borrowing these, and I only had 4 of this size. I also wanted to try to put these ducks in there, which is why this one's floating. I got them to be little floaters, but they don't fit. So if I want to continue this, if this becomes a thing, I think I will buy my own, and I will make them big enough to fit these cute little ducks. but now he's just chilling in there. So the first category that I've set up today is Best Score, Best Original Score written for the stage. I will also be looking at Best Book of a Musical and the 2 directing categories of Direction of a Play and Direction of a Musical. But what are the main categories of people that will be voting for all of these that I will be distributing points for? Well, the first is the Outer Critics Circle Awards, a group of New York theater writers that work for out-of-state publications that celebrate both Broadway and off-Broadway shows. We also have the Drama Desk Awards, which are made up of New York City-based theater critics, journalists, editors, and publishers. And finally, we have the Drama League Awards, which are made up of theater community, including actors, designers, directors, playwrights, producers, critics, and theater-going audiences. First, Best Score. Some things that are interesting to point out is we have 2 plays here, which is Death of a Salesman and Joe Turner's Come and Gone, both written by August Wilson. And then we also have Schmigadoon here, which is interesting because a lot of people did not think that Schmigadoon would be eligible for this category, as a lot of the songs are based off of the TV show that it is based on. And that prevented shows like Smash last season from being eligible for this category. So when it was eligible, I think that threw a lot of people for a loop, which also could indicate some differences in opinion on how people feel. That still may turn some people off from wanting to vote for Schmigadoon because they may not see as it's being originally written for the stage. Death of a Salesman, we have Joe Turner's Come and Gone, we have The Lost Boys, Schmigadoon, and 2 Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York. And so these are all eligible for Best Score. Now, it's interesting to see that some plays are nominated, that this isn't a rarity. I mean, plays have been nominated before. Even in a year when we don't have a lot of original musicals or original musicals that could be eligible. For example, Titanic cannot be considered for this category as it is a jukebox musical using all the songs from Celine Dion. I am surprised that something like The Queen of Versailles from Stephen Schwartz was not nominated here. I know the show had a lot of issues. I actually saw it in its pre-Broadway tryout here in Boston before it went to New York, and I still think that score was gorgeous. I think that Stephen Schwartz is a genius in his own way, and I don't think it's recognized enough for that, or only gets recognized really for Wicked and not some of his other work like Pippin. Let's see how things shake up and how many points we are going to be distributing, and hope I can use this giant pipette, which was a lot bigger than I originally expected, if I can get this to work correctly. First award show we'll be looking at is the Outer Critics Circle nominations, and this is one of those times where they do combine this category with off-Broadway shows. So when we distribute out points, it may seem like there's lacking because there's just not a whole lot of points to give. So, what got an Outer Critics Circle nomination? That's too much water. Shows that got an Outer Critics Circle nomination were The Lost Boys and 2 Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York. Neither of them won, though. I believe Exodus won this. Then we have the Drama Desk Awards. This kind of breaks it up into music and lyrics, but I'm still going to count it for this category because it is going to be something that gets recognized. Obviously, the music is still getting recognized for this. And 2 Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York did get a nomination for its lyrics, and it also won the Drama Desk for its lyrics. So that will be 2 points for 2 Strangers. And that's really it. The Drama League didn't give out this award to any of the nominated productions, and these 3 didn't get any. Again, it doesn't surprise me that the 2 plays didn't get nominations, only because when you think of score, you really don't think of plays at first. And Schmigadoon didn't get any nominations or any points or nominations for this as well, because I do think a lot of people were unsure if it was going to qualify at the time that these nominations were released. But also they may still have that bias in mind of it's not an original score, so why are we gonna give it anything? And so that means Two Strangers with 3 points to the 1 given to the Lost Boys is the winner for Best Original Score. And this makes me happy. Just like the Queen of Versailles, I did see Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York. Yes, that's a long title. I usually just call it Two Strangers. But I did see them in their pre-Broadway tryout at the American Repertory Theater in Cambridge, and I fell in love with the show. I haven't stopped thinking about it, singing it since. And even though it does have 8 nominations, I do think that even before looking at these points, I do think that this is still the best chance for it to win its Tony is for Best Original Score. I don't really think it's going to win anything else, but this makes me happy because I would love to walk away with this being their win because I do really love this show. Let's do Best Book of a Musical and switch some things up. All right, and next we have Best Book of a Musical. Book of a Musical is essentially not just a script, but how all of the music fits into it as well. So when you hear Book of a Musical, usually you can kind of incorporate it into screenplay, for like the Oscars or something like that, Best Writing. That's essentially how Book of a Musical is given out. As I was starting to get more into these award shows, I didn't realize, I'm like, why isn't there Best Book of a Play? That's literally like what a play is like the entirety of the script. And that is because if you write a play and it wins for Best Play, that's when you get your nomination. That's when you get your Tony Award. Essentially, if you are the writer of a play and it's nominated for Best Play, that is your nomination. There's not a separate category for Book of a Play because that's how you would get recognized for it. So, for example, last year, again, Purpose won Best Play, and then Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, he was the writer of that play, so he was the one that was given the award for Best Play, whereas usually musical, again, similar to like Best Picture, is given to the producers of it. We have Best Book of a Musical, and here we have The Lost Boys, Schmigadoon, Titanic, and Two Strangers. Yes, there's only 4 this time. The Tony Awards are very interesting, where depending on how many things are eligible for each category, you can really only nominate a certain few. That's why there's not 5 here. They try to get it to 5, but some categories will have 5, other categories will have 4 or 3. Some categories may also end up having like 6 to 7 if there is a tie, because they honor ties in that way, which I think is super cool. So this one only has 4, and that is because usually also revivals most of the time cannot be nominated for their book. I think sometimes in the past they have, but it's very, very uncommon. So these are basically the new musicals that are getting the most recognition for everything. So for this, we had 3 out of the 4 shows actually get nominations at the Outer Critics Circle Awards, and that was The Lost Boys. We also had a win for a nomination for Schmigadoon. And we had a nomination for Two Strangers. But at the Outer Critics Circle, there could only be 1 winner, which was actually determined here for this category. And that was Schmigadoon. For score, like I said, I think a lot of people are going to ignore Schmigadoon because they may not think it is eligible for that category, as it's not fair for it to be eligible for that category, as it's... I haven't seen the show yet, so I don't know how similar it is to the TV show, but I think a lot of people in their heads are just going to equate that with the TV show and not want to give it that recognition. Whereas for the book, because of how amazing the show was and how lively it was and how well I think a show like that can translate to stage, I think that it doesn't surprise me that this is probably going to win Best Book. I think I would definitely lock this one in. And I'm going to lock all of these in because these are my predictions, because we're using science. And so I think that it doesn't surprise me that this ends up winning 2 points to 1 point to 0 points to 1 point. I would love, again, for Two Strangers to end up winning it, but I really do think this is Schmigadoon's category. I really do think so. The Lost Boys and Schmigadoon actually ended up with the most nominations. They tied at 12 apiece. And I've heard very mixed things about The Lost Boys. I've heard people love it, I've heard people hate it, but even those who love it do say that the issue lies kind of within the book and how the ending kind of wraps up in a way that isn't great. And so I think that will deter people from nominating it or giving it to The Lost Boys to win for that. So I do think that this may be a second place with how well liked the show is, but I do think that Schmigadoon really does take the cake here with this one. Next category we have is going to be Best Direction of a Play. Now for like the directing categories, the acting categories, all of the set categories like production design and lighting design, sound design, all of that, you can have a combination of both revivals and original works as well. The only time we really split up original versus new is for categories like score, when there's like new jukebox musicals or book of a musical, and also the main categories of best play, best revival of a play, best musical, best revival of a musical. But then for basically all of the other categories, it is combined, which is why you may see certain plays and musicals that end up in Best Revival also be nominated for these other categories. For example, 2 years ago when both Jonathan Groff and Daniel Radcliffe won for Best Leading Actor and Best Featured Actors, respectively, they were both in a revival show, but there wasn't a revival actors category. They were just all in one category. So for basically the rest of these categories, you're going to see a combination of both revivals and new works in here. Now for our categories for Best Direction of a Play, we have Kenny Leon for The Ballisters, which I always want to call The Ballusters for some reason, and I don't know why, but it's Ballisters. We also have Joe Mantello for Death of a Salesman, Nicholas Heitner for Giant, Whitney White for Liberation, and Robert Ike for Oedipus, which I've been really curious to try to know more about this Oedipus. I just saw the play Oedipus El Rey by me, which is more of a Hispanic look at LA gang culture through the lens of Oedipus, the traditional tale. But I really am curious to know what this one would be. I'm trying to see more. If anyone has like a full-on plot synopsis, not just like a little like quote of like the general ideas, please let me know where I can read that, because this one is focusing on Mark Strong's character of Oedipus, but he's running for like political office. So I'm really curious about this one. This is one that my interest was like piqued. I'm really curious to see how they make the story of Oedipus into a modern day political tale. So to start with the Outer Critics Circle, we had two of these directors nominated. We had Joe Mantello for Death of a Salesman, and we had Robert Ike for Oedipus. And the winner of this category, the Outer Critics Circle, was Mr. Mantello for Death of a Salesman. Two also got nominations from the Drama Desk Awards. They were Kenny Leon for The Ballisters and Joe Mantello for Death of a Salesman. Joe Mantello would also go on to win the Drama Desk Award. We also had one person nominated for the Drama League Award, and that was Mr. Joe Mantello for Death of a Salesman. And then he would also go on to win the Drama League Award for Best Direction of a Play. Taking a look here at our science, it is best to say that Mr. Joe Mantello for Death of a Salesman is probably going to win. He got 6 points, which if he was up for the Olivier Award, that would be the only other extra point that he can get. For a lot of these categories, 6 points is going to be the most amount, as he will be nominated and winning the 3 major award shows, again with the extra points potentially given for the Olivier Award, but that is a lot less common. So the fact that he not only got a nomination across all 3 of the voting bodies, but he also won all of them as well, I think pretty much settles that Joe Mantello will be winning for Death of a Salesman. I've also been hearing a lot of great things about the Ballisters though. Not so much in its direction, but just a lot of good hype around it, which could also help Kenny Leon here as well. And same for Liberation. I heard nothing but amazing things about Liberation when it came out. And it did actually win the Pulitzer for drama. And so that would also, I think, give Whitney White a little bit of elevation as well, even though she did not earn any points here. She didn't get any nominations or any wins across the categories. But I do think it's really interesting that the nominations were a little bit distributed, but all of the wins went over to Kenny Leon, and he is not going to be the only one in this series that kind of looks like they're a little bit of a runaway hit. Our final category for this video is going to be direction of a musical. And our final category is all set up. It's going to be best direction of a musical. So we have 5 nominees in this category, again ranging from a combination of new musicals and revival musicals. Our nominees are Jaylon Livingston and Bill Roch for the Cats the Jellicle Ball. We have Michael Arden for The Lost Boys, Lear DeBossonnet for Ragtime, Christopher Giletti for Schmigadoon, and Tim Jackson for Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York. Nation I was surprised by. I really didn't think Tim Jackson would get it, but I'm very happy in my little musical that could. All right, so let's begin again, as always, with the Outer Critics Circle nominations. That went to 2 of these directors, if I had my thing on the right measurement. There we go. It went to Lear DeBossonnet for Ragtime and Michael Arden for The Lost Boys. And the big winner here was Lear DeBossonnet for Ragtime. For the Drama Desk Awards, we only had 1 nominee amongst these 5, and that was DeBossonnet for Ragtime, where she also went on to win the Drama Desk. And then finally, we had the Drama League Award, which the nominations went to 2 of these directors, and that was the directors for Cats, Roch and Levinson, and it went to Lear DeBossonnet for Ragtime. And the winner, as you could probably guess, was Miss DeBossonnet. So similar to Joe Mantello, Lear DeBossonnet went on to not only be nominated in all 3 of the major categories, but also go on to win them as well. And I think that does speak to how much people are connecting with this Ragtime production that has been put on, this revival of it all. I have heard, however, that people who even love Ragtime don't necessarily like the direction of it and don't think it's necessarily deserving of this award. And so that really interests me. Obviously, I haven't seen the show. I can't really discuss my opinion on it. That's why we're using science, because I haven't seen any of the shows except for Two Strangers and Queen of Versailles, and technically the Mamma Mia revival, because I was on tour as well. Those are the only ones I've seen. Again, cannot really give my opinion on what I think. That's just what I've been hearing, is that even, again, people who love Ragtime and this new production do not necessarily think the direction stands out all that much, especially when you're looking at shows like Cats or Schmigadoon or The Lost Boys. Again, Tim Jackson, I love you. I'm very happy you have this nomination, but I think your direction's great. I think people kind of forget about you, and I apologize. That is another example of how we can see that when something really hits for a person, like Death of a Salesman or like Ragtime, usually the director will go along with it. And I think this can really help us predict where some of the Tony nominations or wins may go come June 7th. That is it for this video, as I do not want to ramble forever. The next video is going to be talking about all of the acting categories, all 8 of them. There is a lot, as we have both lead and supporting actor and actress for both plays and musicals. It gets to be a lot. But I have to wipe down this table because my giant pipette is a little leaky, but that's okay because we are still able to use it for science and be able to see how all of these go. I want to know what your predictions are. Are you going to be watching the Tony Awards? What do you think is going to win? What does your heart want you to win? And is it two strangers like me? Let me know all of that down in the comments below. This has been a lot of fun to research and put together. I can't wait for you to see the other parts of this. So keep a lookout for those. They will hopefully be coming out within the next few days. But until then, thank you so much. And until next time, keep on gabbing.